Hello everyone, welcome to the channel and to this first video of mine where I'm actually going to talk. I've been driving a Chevy VOLT Plug-In Hybrid for the last 5 months, but I've always got an eye towards perhaps getting an all-electric someday. Any of these cars are fabulous for local driving and running errands and that type of thing, but when you start thinking about them for a trip and doing some kind of distance, you have to get involved in charging out on the road somewhere. So in order to kind of help make a decision, I came up with a very short road trip scenario and decided to talk about what would happen with any of these three types of cars if I were to take them on this particular road trip. Whenever you talk about taking any of these cars out on a road trip, you've got to be concerned about what's available out in the wild for charging. There's three types of chargers basically. Level 1 chargers are those that we typically have at home where we plug them into a 110 outlet and it takes hours to recharge your car, but it works because we plug them in and let them run overnight. Level 2 chargers are doable at home. They're 220 volt basically, and they can be 40, 50, or even 60 amp chargers. They basically charge a lot faster. They're doable at home, and of course there are many places out in the wild where this type of charger is available for us to utilize. Level 3 chargers, however, are not set up for the home environment. They're also referred to as DC fast chargers, and you've probably all heard of the Tesla Superchargers, which also fall into this group. They're very fast, and they're the type of thing that people who travel would like to utilize whenever possible. For the purposes of this analysis, I chose a simple, short trip to my son's house, which is outside of State College, Pennsylvania, starting here in my home in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. It's a trip of about 150 miles, and when I typically drive up there using an ICE car, it takes 2.5 to 3 hours. So it's not a particularly difficult thing. Probably 75% of the trip is on highway speeds, doing 60, 65 miles per hour, and the rest of it is local. The trip up is fundamentally uphill, and there is one long, steep hill to climb. And of course, on the way back, you're basically losing elevation on the way back. As mentioned before, I own a Chevy VOLT, which is a plug-in hybrid. The VOLT gives you roughly 53 miles of electric range, but it has an onboard gas engine to generate enough power to keep you going, and it carries enough gasoline to give you about a 350-mile range. So it easily could make the trip up without any problem at all. Now, if I were taking this trip up with the VOLT, I would just simply bring my level 1 charger along, plug it in, and I would get that 53 miles back in about 12 hours on a regular 110 outlet. If I were to plug it into a level 2 charger, which is a 220 volt, I would get about 12 miles per charge hour, and it would take about 4.5 hours to replenish that battery that's in there to get to 53 miles. The main thing is you're not going to do the whole trip on the battery, and you have the backup gas generator to kind of keep you going, so there's no range anxiety or anything of that type. One all-electric car that interests me is the Chevy Bolt with a B. It's an all-electric vehicle, and it has enough battery to take you roughly 230 miles. So what that means is on our hypothetical 150-mile trip, I would get to my son's house and need to replenish that battery in order to make the trip back home. Somewhere, I've got to pick up another 100 miles or so of range in order to comfortably make the trip back. So, if I use a level 1 charger, it's going to take hours to do that, better than 24 hours. And it probably wouldn't be an issue if you're going to be staying put for a day or two and you can just plug it in and let it run. Obviously, at the very least, you want to try to use a level 2 charger, which would give you about 25 miles per hour of charge. But that, even at that, you're talking 4 or 5 hours. Now, if you use the ChgHr app, there are a bunch of these level 2 chargers in the State College area, but obviously you're going to have to plug it in, maybe have somebody pick you up and bring you home, and then come back 4 or 5 hours later and just sort of leave the car there charging up. That's the only other alternative. Now, most of these cars come through with capability of being fast charged. However, the ChgHr app shows none of those kinds of chargers around in the State College area. So you're going to have to use the level 2 charger and somehow or other find a way to leave it plugged in for 4 or 5 hours. Another all-electric car that has my interest, and it has the interest of many people these days, would be the Tesla Model 3. The base model, which is not available yet, and they predict that it'll be coming out in 2019, gives you a range of about 220 miles. So just like the Bolt, when I get to my son's house, I've got to find a place to charge this thing up. Now, one advantage to the Tesla is that there's a very wide numbers of Tesla Superchargers available, and in fact, there are several available right in the State College area, as well as in a couple of places along the way to get there. So the advantage there is you could find one of these Superchargers, plug in an hour or so, you've got enough miles and you're good to go. So you don't have to rely on a level 2 charger. You can use the Supercharger network, which is pretty extensive at this point. Another option to keep in mind is if you wanted to spend extra $5,000, you can get a mid-range battery, which would give you 270-mile range, or for an extra $9,000, you can get an extended range battery, which would give you 310 miles. Basically, anybody who's doing extensive amounts of traveling and road trips and all, you want as much battery as you can get to kind of spread out the number of times that you have to stop at a supercharger to get a few extra miles built back into that battery. For my case, I wouldn't want to spend that extra money, so it's either the base model with the 220-mile battery or nothing at all. Regardless of what the situation is with level 2 and level 3 chargers, wherever you happen to travel on a road trip, the word is it does extend the amount of time that it takes for you to complete a road trip. There's just no way around it. Because unlike a gas car where you pull up to a pump and you're on your way for five minutes later, you're going to have to wait at least an hour in most of these superchargers and that type of thing. And if you're stuck with a level 2 charger, it could be even longer. So these cars really are ideal for the local, run to the mall, run to the store, that kind of thing. So what some people are doing is, if they're an all-electric family, some people will actually go out and rent a gas car for vacations and that type of thing. Others are like us, where we have 2 cars, and one of our cars will always be an ICE vehicle, so that we have that to fall back on for trips and that sort of thing. My Chevy Volt basically is beautiful for working around town and running local errands and that type of thing. And it's amazing how 50 miles of range really covers just about everything that we do on a day-to-day basis. So thanks again for visiting the channel and listening to what I had to say about all of this type of thing and what it might take to go on a road trip with an electric vehicle. Someday I may have one and be able to experience it live, but for now I'm very happy with the Volt and the fact that it has the range extenders so that when I run out of battery I can still keep on going and take it on a road trip if I so choose to do so. So that's about all I have. Thanks again. If you get a chance, subscribe. Otherwise, we'll catch you on the next one.